Well, I'm Rick Deyo, and it's a delight to be with you today. And before we begin, I want to thank some very special people. Dr. Michael Tracy, Dr. Antonio Capone, Chairman of the Board of Directors of the Pediatric Retina Research Foundation, and of course, Stephanie Seville, Foundation Manager. So my story begins June 4th, 1952. And you may have already realized by watching this video that I have an eye condition with. And if you'll notice, my left eye is turning off to your right, and then I do not see at all out of my right eye at all. So, on a humorous note, I can drive along the highway, and it looks like I'm looking out past the driver's window, and people will wave, but I never see them because I'm driving like this down the highway, looking out the driver's window instead of straight ahead in the windshield. So humorously, that's something that we've lived with all these years. And so I was born June 4th, 1952, 7 to 8 weeks premature, and weighing approximately 3 pounds 9 ounces. And doctors placed me in an incubator for 14 days, and under those circumstances, that was a high-risk baby back then. My parents and the doctors did not realize the severity of the damage to my retinas, whether that was because of the shortened gestation period or the oxygen level in the incubator. But they did discover that about the age of 4 when I ran into the corner of the picnic table. And obviously, I have scars to show that above my right eye where they had stitches. So from that point on, I would see an ophthalmologist every year. And it was an eye condition that the technical name is retinolineal fibroplasia. And today they've shortened that to ROP, which is retinopathy of prematurity. And so there really wasn't any significant events in grade school other than I could recall taking the Iowa tests, and we would take those tests. And because of my being 2 to 3 grade levels behind in reading, due to the eye condition, I would never finish those tests on time. And so when the teacher would ask or tell us that we had so many minutes left to take the test, I would just go along and fill in the little circles as quickly as I could. So the test results were very much skewed, either that I was the genius in the class or I obviously wasn't the smartest one in the class. But really, there was nothing. My parents just kept me just growing up just like a normal kid. In fact, when I was about 7 or 8 years of age, I tried to play baseball. And again, humorously speaking, the pitcher is looking at me and I'm looking at the third baseman. At least that's how the pitcher is interpreting it. And he throws the ball inside. I get hit with the ball and I get on first base. And I kept telling my mother, I don't want to play baseball anymore. So, again, the doctors at that time in medical science, their advice was just let Rick grow up like a normal little boy. Okay. Well, as we progressed, things became more difficult for me. And particularly, even though I had a paper route, even though I worked and cut grass and pushed a lawnmower, there were still things under the surface that I didn't know how to reconcile. And in 8th grade, they all rose to the surface. And it was during that time that I really had a difficult time in life and in school. The first instance that I got in a fight with a classmate of mine, and I was sent home from school because of the things he had said to me about my eyes, and so there were punches thrown and pushing, and my parents didn't know how to deal with that. Then there was another incident where my math teacher asked me, called upon me in 8th grade math class to read a story problem. Well, I couldn't read real well and I hadn't practiced. And so I was reading that story problem. And the teacher said to me, he says, Rick, you really need to get your eyes checked. Well, that was just devastating to me as a little boy. And fortunately, there was an individual in class 2 rows behind me, Janet. She piped up and said, Mr. Lang, Rick sees the best ophthalmologist in Detroit. Well, somebody spoke up, and when I couldn't. And at the time, I really didn't appreciate that. Today I do, but then I didn't. And then the other third event that occurred in 8th grade that was really pretty devastating. Up to that point, I really thought people in white coats, the physicians, the eye specialists, the ophthalmologists, could solve all the problems. And I obviously had my annual exam with my ophthalmologist, and he and I were talking, and I said, "Is there anything you can do?" And he said, "Well, Rick, we could put a prism in your glasses, and that would make it appear like you're looking straight at somebody. But it'd be very difficult, Rick, and it's something that it would make it even more noticeable." Well, I was very discouraged and very depressed, and inside I was at rage, and I was very angry. And I remember coming home that night with my mother and at the dinner table telling my dad. I turned to him and I said, "Dad, why did you make me this way?" Well, you can imagine my parents, they loved me dearly. I mean, they didn't really know how to deal with this. Well, then 9th grade, things got a little bit better. And I went out for football. I was a heavy set little boy. And in 9th grade, I made the football team and they placed me, humorously speaking, I was a defensive tackle on the offensive center. And of course, I'm looking at him with no eye protection. And you tell doctors about that today. And even when I tried to play baseball, a blow to the head, I would have had a detached retina and I would have been blind. And so the ball's hiked, and the offensive center thinks I'm going to go to my left, his right. Well, I don't. I go to my right, his left, and I get the quarterback. And everybody's excited. Well, look what Rick just did. And I was what they call big man on campus. And I felt like I belonged, and there was some purpose to what I was doing. And for the first time in my life, I was starting to achieve something. Even though I was having difficulty in school, boy, I was excelling in football. I even recovered a fumble that year, and the coach couldn't believe that Rick Deyo recovered a fumble, and he couldn't even see to which way to go. The refs came over me, and he said, "Son, you could have gotten up and run with it." And I said, "Well, I wouldn't know which way to go." But anyways, so life went on, and then it was a pivotal event. And that pivotal event occurred at Eastern Michigan University on October 6th, 1970. I came to faith in Christ, and that gave me a different purpose. My hero then was Eric Liddell, the Olympic runner in 1924 that ran for the Olympics. And my other heroes were Marty LaCouri and Jim Ryan, Olympic runners, Dave Watto from Bowling Green University. And so I started to run track and cross country with a greater purpose. And that purpose produced results. I had never broken 6 minutes in high school in a mile, never achieved breaking 12 minutes in the 2 mile in high school. Well, I found myself then qualifying for the Boston Marathon in the summer of 1971. And then in February of 1972, at an invitational at the University of Michigan, I ended up running a 4:15 mile. Can you believe that? I mean, it's just outstanding. I had lost all that baby fat and all that weight, and I could do 100 push-ups without stopping. I mean, it was just incredible. And at the end of that meet, I ended up running a 9:56 2 mile. So I thought at that time, wow, I have the potential to actually contribute and produce some excellence in my running skills. Well, then I got injured and that ended the whole thing. And I had transferred then to another school and college. And so we fast forward, I get married, I met my wife at Ohio State, and every year we sit and watch the Ohio State Michigan game, and she sits on one side of the room, I sit on the other side of the room. But so in 1979, my ophthalmologist in Clark Summit, Pennsylvania, referred me to Wills Eye Hospital in Philadelphia. So for the first time in my adult life, I saw a retina specialist by the name of Dr. William Tasman. And he took pictures. And of course, I kidded with him. I said, you know, if you're going to use pictures of my retinas in your journal articles, I ought to get royalties from that. Well, I never did get royalties, but everything was stable. Everything was fine through a series of circumstances. I then became in 1988, I began a career in the financial services arena. And at that time, I was with Northwestern Mutual, very fine financial services company. And in 1994, my life changed. I had seen Dr. Tasman in 1979. So in 1994, I had fast progressing cataracts. And those cataracts, the prevailing opinion at that time was to wait and remove the cataract when it's old and crusty. Well, obviously, my doctors here locally wanted to wait. And I said, I really want to get a second opinion. So I called Dr. Tasman, and he got on the phone and he said, and this is a key word that I want you to remember, we're going to go after that aggressively. Okay, I want you to remember that word, aggressive, because we're going to come back to that. And so in November of 1994, I had eye surgery at Wills Eye Hospital. Dr. Raymond Adams did the surgery. Dr. Tasman supervised that, my retina specialist, world-renowned retina specialist, specializing in ROP. And overnight, I went from 2050 on the eye chart to 2025. I had never seen better than 2050. They had put a lens implant in my eye with magnification to it. And, but again, that was high risk surgery, because if they were to tear that capsule that you put the lens implant in, then that implant would flop back into the retina cavity and tear my retina, and I would be blind. The morning of my surgery was very significant. I was sitting there all by myself, and the nurse had taken my chart, and I was sitting there, and there was a myriad of thoughts going through my mind. And obviously I was concerned about Sarah and Brian, our only son, and who was going to take care of them? How were we going to support ourselves if I was blind? And just then over the PA system came this song, Give Thanks with a Grateful Heart. So at that point, I really reflected deeply in my own heart about gratefulness and thankfulness. And I am, and I was that day, very thankful for the wife that was given to me and our dear son, who was about 10 years of age at the time. So the surgery was successful. And that Christmas was really special. I saw colors that were so vivid. I had seen the best I have ever seen in my whole life. Well, we went on, and that was my career in the financial services arena. And everything has progressed from the age of 45 till now. I'm 69. And here is the significant event of why I'm connected with the Pediatric Retina Research Foundation. Everything has come full circle. I grew up in Livonia, Michigan, and now I think it's very providential that I'm coming back to Michigan and doing something that's part of my legacy. During the time in 1994, unbeknown to me, Dr. Tasman and Dr. Michael Tracy were conversing back and forth about the prevailing incidence of removing cataracts when they were old and crusty. And every time they would do that on a patient such as myself, the incidence of a detached retina would occur 95% of the time. So their only alternative was to be aggressive. And they concluded from their discussions that they would be aggressive in removing those cataracts. And I was the recipient of that consultation between Dr. Michael Tracy and Dr. William Tasman. And the incidence went down to 4%. And so I am a beneficiary of Dr. Michael Tracy's expertise and Dr. William Tasman's. So today I'm still seeing at 2025 on the eye chart. Of course, I tell people I memorize those eye charts. No, I don't. They change them on me. So I'm very grateful. I am grateful for the people at the Pediatric Retina Research Foundation and all the good that they're doing. And I trust that today's video and interaction will provide not only an exhortation for you to continue in your journey and not give up, but that I would encourage you to persevere, that there is always hope. No matter how bleak or dark the days are, there is always hope that there's a better day tomorrow. Thank you for listening. And if there's anything that I can do by way of encouraging you or be of an encouragement, please let us know, and I'd be happy to do that.